Well, good morning, dear friends. So good that we can be back together for another Devotions from the Grove. I'm Pastor Josh, pastor at Hedricks Grove Reformed UCC in Lexington, North Carolina. So good that you could be with us today. This morning I want to talk about how God is love. I think a lot of times we say that we should love as Christ loved, and we are to, we know that God has love, but there's this component that I think we struggle with. A passage I found here is from 1 Peter chapter 4, starting with verse 8. It says, "Above all, maintain constant love for one another, for love covers a multitude of sins. Be hospitable to one another without complaining. Like good stewards of the manifold grace of God, serve one another with whatever gifts each has received." You see, I think we have this struggle where when we try to love, it's very superficial. You know, we love our cars, we love our new job, we love chocolate, we love, whatever that is. But when God talks about loving, he talks about loving one another in a way that seeks forgiveness. He talks about loving one another in a way that stirs kind of this welcome of one another. Yes, God is love. There is no doubt that God is love. But in God's love, we have to return that. We're sinners. You and I, we sin every day, and we need to know that although God is love, it is not all sweet and harmonious and everything in our lives is going to be perfect. We have to show God that we follow his command. We have to seek forgiveness through Jesus. We have to seek to love one another in actions and not just in words. And I find it hard sometimes to do that. There are times in life where we say we're going to love like Christ. But do we? Or do we find times where when we look at a situation or at somebody, we say, we start to judge or we start to question? You see, Christ said, "I love you enough to give you forgiveness, to take away sin." And so in our love, it must be a love where we don't put somebody down. It must be a love where we don't look the other way when a friend needs help. It must be a love that when we welcome people to our church, we do it with open arms, not with judgmental hearts. You see, God loved everybody. He loved the Gentile, he loved the Jew, he loved the sinner, the saint, the prostitute, the widows. He loved everybody because he knew that if everybody accepted him and accepted God, that they would have forgiveness for eternity. He also knew in a broken world that those that loved him would struggle. And so that's the kind of love I think we need to bring forward. That's the kind of love that we need to try to emulate every day. You see, we are a church that welcomes. We are people that should welcome. And in that welcome, we need to try to be more like Jesus. We need to be more like this steward that God asks us to be. Above all, maintain constant love for one another. You see, God is ultimately the bearer, the giver, the receiver of our love and the giver of love. And although God gives love, He gave it in His Son, we need to be willing to accept that and willing to give it back. So as you go through your week, I want you to think about that. Think about how God loves us, how Jesus said, "Love one another as I have loved you." And then try to show that. Maybe it's simply calling a friend. Maybe it's the next time you see somebody new in church, you walk up to them and introduce yourself and say, "You're welcome here." Maybe it's saying, "I'm sorry." Maybe it's saying, "You're forgiven." Maybe it's finding that place in your heart to put away past hurts, to start new again. Maybe loving as Christ loved is to offer forgiveness, to mend a wound, to welcome a stranger. Maybe it's to forgive yourself. But whatever it is, know that God is love and that God will always be with you.